Welcome to the Evangelisation Conference Ignite 2020 from the Dominicans, St Mary's, Pope's Quay in Cork.
So, Father Vincent, we just the introductory little video there from yourself about your own journey and your sporting background as well. So maybe just for the viewers at home, just to give us a little background into your faith journey. Has it always been part of your life, or was there particular moments in maybe sport as well?
Yeah, so pretty much, it's always been part of my life. I'm cradle Catholic, Rosary praying family, 9:30 or 10 o'clock every evening. My dad would say, okay, that's it, turn off the telly, down on your knees. And so we were Sunday Mass, altar server. This is all part of my journey. And then a couple of fantastic teachers who taught the fundamental principles of the faith so well. Remember a sixth class teacher actually, two things in my memory from him was, one was he loved the Memorare, and he used to always say that the Memorare is my favourite prayer, and I loved it as well from that. And then towards the end of sixth class, the end of primary school, he asked us in the class, he said, anybody here thinking of becoming a priest? And I remember putting up my hand at the time, but his answer was something like, it would make me so proud to see some boys from my class going on for the priesthood. So that was the kind of atmosphere you're talking about, 1980s Ireland and early 90s when everything seemed to be so good from a church point of view. And probably one of the defining moments then was, I think it was Columban missionaries, or maybe the Society of African Missionaries, sent somebody into the secondary school when I was there, maybe in about fifth year. And I remember being on fire listening to him talking about his mission in Africa and the spreading of the faith. And there was a form to sign, and I signed it. And the story goes then, the principal, who was a real old-fashioned Catholic himself, called out over the loudspeaker, Vincent Stapleton and some other boy, there was one other boy, you both signed the vocations form, can you please come to the principal's office now, over the intercom. And I remember going cherry red and having to walk out in front of everyone. They're all kind of saying, oh my God, what? And so when I got there, I said, I just kind of clammed up and I said, I'm interested, but I just lay involvement, that's all, and head down. And so I went through this kind of Catholic environment, or old Irish Catholic environment, with all the old school stuff. And it was only when I became a teacher that the questions came to me through the children. Great questions from primary school kids, and I've always seen that. Even the younger kids, second class ones from First Holy Communion, fantastic questions about the world as they're grappling with it. And that made me go to the books and say, and I just got this love then of theology, of books on spirituality, and I'd say it still probably hadn't arrived at that relationship with Jesus, that friendship with him. That was coming later, but at some stage it was just magnetic, like maybe about the age of 25 or 26, after giving a few years teaching, I was looking at the students and saying, this is the most important thing. My conviction was that I'm teaching them, not the maths, not the PE, not the art, to know their faith, to have that ultimate reason for life, and the source of the goodness and truth and beauty that we see around us. And so, but the embarrassment was still there, going back to when I was 15, of having to stand out in front of a secular world at this stage. You're talking maybe 2008 or 9, and the scandals and all that had broken, and to say, I'm with Jesus. And that was so hard.
Of course. It
was like the rocket, the original power needed to get the rocket off the ground. It took something to escape the gravity of the world and the things I was enjoying in the world that I thought I'd have to leave but didn't. So, but I entered the seminary then in August 2009, and from the moment I came into the seminary, it was like I'd reached out, I was floating, there was nothing pulling me down after that, and I was in an environment that really nurtured prayer, and we were talking at the breakfast about Jesus and about the Bible and spirituality. It was just, I was finally breathing fully, breathing with two lungs.
Of course, yeah.
So, so I was ordained in 2015, Independence Day, July 4th, and 5 years nearly now a priest, which is hard to believe. And it's been fantastic, challenging, but fantastic.
Yeah. No, there's so much in that answer, with regards to what we're talking about here today. If we kind of run through that, first of all, prayer at home. the importance of prayer as a family, as a real seed ground of the faith, especially from parents and so forth. And then you're talking there about school, the powerful influence of a good teacher, and what that on a young man or young woman, with regards to the faith. And I remember in 2009, because I joined the seminary the same year, we were the same group in 2009, and a real wonderful year. I think we had over 30 seminarians that year, and the Dominicans had a big group of 13 as well. And my image of you in those, because I was only there for the month, was that obviously I remember in the afternoons when we had some free time, I'd see you outside with the hurl, and you'd go out onto the pitch there in your gear with the hurl still playing away and exercising and so forth. So maybe just before we turn to the panel, just to talk a little about faith and sport and how you see that, because I know in the video that you, the interviewee put a question to you about the difficulty sometimes of witnessing to your faith to your peers, especially in a sporting environment, which I know can be very, very difficult and very macho and can often suffocate those questions. So how did you find that, in the changing room with your teammates and so forth as a hurler?
Yeah, so there's a couple of directions I could go in this now. And first of all, before we get to the witnessing in the dressing room, because that's really the most important point, just to go back to that time, when I came to Maynooth, the previous God I had, small g, was sport, and like the thing that gave meaning to my life, as it does I think to a lot of young people now, is achievement in sport. And it's very interesting to see how they're dealing with the whole pandemic and the suspension of all sporting activity, because the people who love hurling, and I'm sure it's the same for the soccer, the rugby, the whole lot, the day revolves around getting to the gym, going down then to the collective session, and they're hyping up for the match at the weekend and the adrenaline that gives them. And that was me, because one of the things I wanted was to hurl with Tipperary and to make my name in that way, and the ego was driving a lot of that. And so part of what slowed me going to Maynooth or embracing my faith was saying I have to leave all that behind. And I had it in my head going up to Maynooth. I said, this is awful, I love my hurling, it gives me such life, but I'm putting it behind me now. Sure. And I'm moving on. It's all Jesus now. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the Maynooth and I sat with the vocations director in the first couple of meetings, I was like, I'm kind of putting that all behind me. And he was like, I don't think that's such a good idea. In fact, we're going to kind of insist that you keep some contact with your sport. And obviously, looking back now, I think it was a wise decision. And this whole cold cherry thing of you have to rip up everything in your life and all the good things that are in your life and just dive completely into Jesus. His presence in those, he's already present in a lot of those places. And I kind of discovered that more as time went on, and the old idealistic one that I was going to maybe go and live in a cave. I'm glad I had good directors who were able to tell me to keep up the good things that you have, and you'll find a lot of the joy and goodness of life in them. But they're not God, capital G, either. And if they don't facilitate my faith, well, then I have a problem. Yeah. And I've actually started to enjoy, I wasn't enjoying the sport and I was taking it so seriously. I started to enjoy it so much more when I'm just playing out of a sense of life and love and really, feeling God's pleasure in it. Yeah. So getting back to the dressing rooms are like a lot of my peers, and I'm one of the oldest now in our dressing room, and they're not so into their faith, but I felt they were going to be anti. I told almost nobody up to about 2 weeks before going to Maynooth. Told my parents, told my 3 brothers, 1 or 2 more, and then the weekend before I broke the news with everybody else. And again, the whole scarlet red, I was a bit embarrassed, and maybe that's maybe a personal weakness of mine. Why should I be embarrassed about my faith? But in modern Ireland, this is a thing. And I was swept away without having much face time with any of them. Mm-hmm. And after talking to Father Paul, the vocations director, he said, you stay going with your hurling. And we had a fairly serious match about 4 weeks later. Actually, you might remember we went to Rosary to a retreat after about 4 weeks. And I left Rosary to go to Nina to play a match. And we beat Lara that day. And Ken Hogan was the manager of the Lara team. His brother was a priest. And Ken came into our dressing room after and he says, we hear one of you is after becoming going off to join the priest. It's absolutely fantastic. Let's give him a big round of applause. And our own lads erupted. And I was thinking that they'd be making fun of me and kind of sniggering, and maybe some of them would be. But the sense of support and joy, and a lot of them actually were saying afterwards, there was one in particular who was working the bank, a 9 to 5, and he was kind of just punching the card, and he wasn't into it. And he broke out afterwards, he said, and went off and did something that he always wanted to do. He changed his life, and he said it was you changing your life, going from the teaching into that. It was so radical, he said. I said, how long am I going to wait before I take the plunge and do what I want to do? And I got lovely cards like that as well. So
that's amazing. That's wonderful. And kind of it just shows you there, kind of thinking of the Pope John Paul II's words, throw open the doors to Christ. He won't take anything from you, but he will give you everything. It's such an important message for young people to realize that embracing a kind of devout and practicing Catholic life doesn't mean you leave behind everything that you've enjoyed. In fact, in many ways, you enjoy them even more in an ordered way. So listen, thanks very much, Father Vincent. We'll maybe go to our panelists now, and maybe if we can turn right away to Peter Sands. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hello, Father. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. Great that you've joined us. And listen, a fellow Northerner, we can hear the accents,
Absolutely.
So listen, Peter, as obviously for us here in the Dominicans, and many of us know a bit about your background, but for those at home, we know you're the national leader of Youth 2000. And so maybe, we can't presume that a lot of people who are watching even know what Youth 2000 is. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your role and what Youth 2000 is.
Absolutely, yeah. Youth 2000, cut a long story short, Youth 2000 is an initiative that started up 30 years ago in Ireland with one aim, which was to bring young people to the Eucharist, to the heart of the church. And they've been doing that consistently through holding retreats nationally every year. The Summer Festival will bring 1,000 young people from all across Ireland together to quite literally be in the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. It's an amazing sight, but an equally, if not more amazing sight is that those young people go home and they go to their prayer groups all around the country where they meet week in, week out to do an hour of FaceTime with Jesus in the Eucharist, and the rest of it, an hour or 2 hours of fellowship and friends with those people who share something in their faith. So it's an incredible privilege to be a part of something like this. It's just a blessing in every possible way, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't heard of it, Google it, check it out, the website, the social media, but more importantly, if you're curious that this thing exists and you haven't heard of it before, you gotta go. Yeah, sometimes you have to see to believe, and go and see it and see what it's like, and you'll see incredible young people, incredible transformations. And I'm very privileged because I was listening to Father Vinny's testimony there, and it's incredible. But I'm really privileged to hear testimonies like that, sort of week in, week out, of young people who, I was living this life and it was good, but then I came to a prayer group or I came to a retreat and I discovered Jesus and it got better. And that's the consistent theme across every testimony. Things were good, bad, or middling, but when they encountered Jesus, it just got better because his plan is better.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I know from personal experience, even my own family, I have nieces and nephews who have started going to the retreats for the first time, and they come back completely transformed, Yeah. And I think, I say this often to people as well, who some people, if they're not attending these events, they're wondering, where's the youth in the church in Ireland? And they're wondering about the future. And then you go to something like this, and for the young people themselves, to see over 1,000 young people of their own age shows the importance of peer-to-peer evangelization. But listen, Peter, before we move on to a further question, we're going to show a short Youth 2000 video.
You're the joy, 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 light in my soul. Joy, 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 making me whole. Though I'm broken, I am running into your arms. Oh, you're the joy, 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 light in my soul.
Okay, Peter, so we're back on here. So they've just, people at home have just watched a video of the Youth 2000 retreat or with regards to the organisation. So please God, some people will be moved by that and might, give them incentive to go along. I just want to put one more question to you before I move on to Sarah Moynihan. One of the novices here told me that for last year for the retreat in Clongowes, I think some of the Youth 2000 volunteers went out onto the streets to promote, the retreat. And and I suppose as someone who came from the Legion of Mary, it was very kind of a very constant practice of the Legion to go out on the streets 2 by 2, very scriptural, obviously. But what feedback did you get? How did they find that trying to share the faith on the street?
It's an incredible thing to witness. Whenever I think about what our role is as young Catholics and how Youth 2000 feeds into that, just as you mentioned, your nieces and your nephews, people come back transformed. There is no doubt about that. I mean, they go and they have this experience with thousands of the young people. They spend a lot of time with Jesus in the Eucharist. And our faith is dynamite. And when young people experience that up close, it has a transformative effect, not just on them, but I would go as far as to say on the parish and the diocesan landscape, because they come back on fire. They're going into their parishes and they're the ones that are becoming annoying. They're knocking on the priest's door. They're, how can I help you? What can I do? I want to start a prayer group. I want to go out on the street. I want to share my faith. Because once they've encountered this, they go out. And there's a quote from Pope Benedict. It's very famous. A lot of people will know it. It's that the world offers you comfort, but you weren't made for comfort. You were made for greatness. But no one feels that quite like young people. I mean, whether they're into their faith or not, they're growing up and they feel it in their heart that I want to do something amazing. I want to do something transformative. The world should be a little bit different because I'm here. And when you introduce young people with that fire in their heart to Eucharistic Jesus, they're willing to go out onto the streets. They're willing to go and give church talks. They're willing to invite their peers in peer-to-peer ministry because it's a transformative thing. So last summer when they went out onto the streets, the reception was incredible. It was a little bit like Father Vinny was saying, you sort of expect a reaction, but then the reaction you get is not that. And it just blows your mind 10 times over because people are stopping you on the street wearing your T-shirts that say, come along, or Youth 2000. And they're at best really patting you on the back saying, good job, I'm so proud to see young people in Ireland, flying the flag for the faith and inviting their peers. And then at worst, people are curious. At absolute worst, they want to know, what is this about and why do you do this and why are you so passionate about it? So either way, it's a massive opportunity to share what you've been given, to share this encounter with Jesus. To sum it up, I would say 2 things. It's just like the St. Andrew. He encountered Jesus and then he went and he got his brother to bring him to Jesus. And it's the same. These young people encounter Jesus and then we're encouraging them, okay, go home and bring your brother. Bring your friend, bring your teammate, bring your clubmate, bring your colleague, because once you love something that thoroughly, you want to share it out. And that's the beautiful opportunity we have. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I think I'm in a very privileged place to say the church in Ireland is very much alive in the youth. You just see so many young people who are on fire to do something amazing, to do something great. And I would love for more people to see what I see on a week-to-week basis, that the church is alive, the young people are on fire. And at this particular time, I think we're going to see massive growth in the young church in Ireland because these events are getting bigger. There's more initiatives, more ministries, more apostles springing up. There's more prayer groups, more people going to prayer groups, more retreats, bigger retreats. And it's just a privilege to be here at this time when the cogs are turning, and praise God for it.
God bless you, Peter. Yeah, no, it's great that you made reference to the Eucharist there. I know in Youth 2000, Eucharistic adoration is central. And we know the church teaches that, that Eucharist is a source and summit of the Christian life. If the people don't know the Lord, how are they going to be able to share that? And so maybe this is a good time to bring in Sarah Moynihan, because Sarah's well known to us here. But apart from her own story herself, we know that Sarah's mother and her family indeed have been very much involved in Eucharistic adoration for children, which is a powerful really thing to do, to bring the young children before the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. But listen, thanks very much, Peter. I'll just move on to Sarah and ask Sarah some questions about her own
Father.
journey. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
How are you?
Very well, thanks. I'm just waiting for you here on the screen.
No worries.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
So Sarah, for those at home, just by way of a short introduction from myself, I know that you're studying at the minute and you're taking time aside from your dissertation that's due tomorrow, I think, is it?
So yeah, my dissertation is due Monday night. I'll be finished college this upcoming month, thank God. I'm in 5th year in Maryvale Institute, which is a Catholic online college in England, and I'm doing the degree in ecclesial divinity, which is kind of like theology, philosophy, bit of scripture, canon law, kind of a big mix mash of our faith. And yeah, I'm nearly there. So my dissertation's due Monday, and I'll be cramming after this call. But no, I'm so excited to be here and be able to watch the retreat online this weekend, because I wouldn't have probably been able to go if it was in Cork. So it's so nice to be able to participate online. And yeah, my dissertation is on the role of women in the church and kind of like defending like the stance of like how beautiful church tradition is, like about women and about how we can serve like men and God and the church ultimately. And it's not about, you know, like division shouldn't come into it. It should be all about like community service, complementarity. It's really long, but I'll send it to you.
But the theology's coming out there. Well, maybe that's lead us into a question as well, because often we think of evangelization, you know, one-on-one contact and usually bringing people to prayer. Of course, that's the foundation. But oftentimes we forget, you know, one of the reasons that leads to a crisis of faith, that people don't know their faith. So maybe how's that experience been for you to go deeper in your studies academically, to study the faith? Has it brought you closer to the Lord? Has it made you a better evangelist, or, you know?
I thought like doing this degree I would know so much by the end of it, and I actually feel like a bigger fool by the end of it, because our faith is so amazingly complex. And one of my best friends, Michaela, and I were talking one day, and we were like, she also did a theology degree, and we were like, we've spent years studying this and we've just realized there's even more to like look at, and there's never a day off with your Catholic faith. There's always something new that strikes you. It's always like made alive in new ways. And definitely by studying it, it has just purely opened my eyes to the beauty of it, the complexity of it. And it makes me sad then that not everyone knows this. So that kind of fires me up to want to like serve the youth back and like bring, I don't know, try to be a missionary here at home and let others know the beauty and depth of this faith, because it literally, it's the answer to everything and every life problem, and there's an answer for all the hard questions if you do go and look for them, which I guess is all what I'd say on that matter.
That's great. And just before we move on to Mark, maybe to make reference as well, because I know in some of the summers in recent past there that you were involved with Focus Ministries in America, is that right?
Yes.
Could you maybe, for those at home, could you give us a bit of background with regards to Focus and how they operate maybe in an American context and what we could learn from that?
Focus stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, and I first went to a Focus retreat back in 2016 in Dallas, and I was 18 I think at the time, and it was this retreat just after Christmas, and there was I think 4,000 people at a young college students at this retreat, and I was blown away by like 4,000 people. I had grown up going to U2000, seeing 1,200 people every summer going to the retreats, and then I noticed, like when I went to America, I was like, this is even bigger. And it was just quite like a retreat here at home, you know, talks, mass, time with other young people. And I wanted to go back to another one of the retreats, so I went again in 2018 to Chicago, and this was the same retreat, Student Leadership Summit, it's called SLS. And when I was at that retreat in 2018, I found out about a program called Summer Projects, which is basically a summer with focus in Colorado. And I had always wanted to like go to Colorado, even from being a young girl. So I was like this sounds like a Catholic J1. This is like amazing. So I applied and I got accepted, and I ended up spending 2 summers in Colorado, the first summer 2018 and last summer 2019. And if it wasn't for Corona, I probably would have been back there this summer. Sure. But it's Focus are just an incredible ministry. Their mission is like mainly predominantly on campuses in America. They work usually with the Catholic chaplaincies on campus and have Bible studies for students and walk with students in their everyday life. Like a missionary who works on a campus would usually have 3 disciples, which is kind of like 3 students they would walk closely with on a weekly basis. They'd meet up for coffee and do Bible study, but also just like, find out what is going on, what are your struggles at the minute. Like we all know like real life is really hard. And sometimes my secular kind of friends would be like, do you live this perfect like bubble life where like you've no problems or no struggles? And that's like so far from the truth. It's so Focus missionaries really walk with students through that, and the Focus missionaries themselves are dealing with life too. But it's an amazing ministry, and the last 2 summers taught me so much about just investing in the person in front of you, authentically, just like being like present, and I guess like the 3 pillars of Focus are authentic friendship, which I talked about, like walking with a person, and spiritual multiplication. That is like, if you invest in a person and they like learn the faith and receive Jesus, they can then bring that to someone else, and that then it multiplies. And the other one is divine intimacy, which is the most important one. That is a relationship with the Lord. And I guess we don't want to fall into the trap that we are the savior in a person's walk or journey, but we are like just an instrument and a witness to like the overall mission of the church. And just being able to allow like divine intimacy be the most important thing, because a relationship with the Lord is what's most important. Because if we want to spend eternity with him, we need to get chatting to him like here as well. Sure. On this side of eternity. And the world is thy ship, not thy home. So just get prepped.
So listen, that's great that you made reference there to especially with regards to Focus on university campuses and so forth, and how difficult that can be sometimes for students in that environment. So if you don't mind, Sarah, maybe we'll let Mark join us for a moment.
Hello, Connor. How are you?
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Mark, I know you're in university, or you're studying at the moment and stuff, and I suppose this would be a good time to. What's been the challenges for, say, a practicing Catholic on university campuses, which are not always, friendly places for someone who's trying to live a practicing Catholic life with those values and so forth? How have you found that experience?
Yes, I suppose everyone's experiences will be different. Each, university campus will have its own dynamics. For myself, personally speaking, coming to DCU in Glasnevin, I arrived on campus and there was no Catholic society. But on my orientation, I made it a priority on day 1 to go find the chaplains in our interfaith centre, and walked in the door, got talking to them, and quite providentially, they had just been informed the day previous about one of the Focus conferences, the SEEK conference that people may have heard of, and that kind of kicked off a very exciting journey for myself. But ultimately, people will have to take the initiative themselves and go find out that community, because there's no guarantees that it will just, fall in front of you. So if you are, a student on campus, or indeed, someone in a workplace, you might have to seek it out, and, take on efforts yourself. I would have gotten involved through the chaplaincy to have done a number of different things, including hosting smaller holy hours with 1 or 2 other Catholic students who would have attended Mass on campus. And from that then sprung the idea of leading a Camino pilgrimage. The first summer that we took, 25 students, only about 5 of whom would have attended Mass regularly. and many more would have had very hostile views to, I suppose, the institutional church. But through walking on those journeys, 5-6 hours a day, whatever it might have been, or having dinner with people, and just spending a huge amount of time, wasting time with people, that it was through those conversations and through, treating people's blisters and whatever else it might be, that people know that you care about them as a whole person. Ultimately, friendships of any kind, any good, authentic friendships, where people want to support each other and better each other, all of those things are good. But ultimately, we do need to find, other Catholics or other Christians on campus. In my case, I found the Christian Union, had some very, very good evangelical friends who, I'm still very close to. And then it was over time that I found other Catholic students, and we together in the last year have set up our own Catholic society on campus, the St. Dominic Society.
Oh, there we are. I didn't know that now. So, Mark, as well, I know you're very involved in parish life. So, obviously, your faith and these initiatives that you're involved in and been organising, how has that flowed into your involvement in parish life, where you find yourself?
Certainly. Peter would have referenced earlier people who were very annoying to their local clerics. I would be case in point, and I'm sure Sarah Kate Moynihan would be very happy to attest to that fact at times. I know certain clergy in our own diocese would say that whenever kind of, the exams are over and I have a little bit of free time, they always get worried because that's when ideas pop into the head. But for myself, I would have gotten involved in our liturgy committee. I would have read at Mass during secondary school. And within secondary school itself, I went to a ETB school. So there was a small Catholic presence in the form of a school chaplain. But other than that, there was nothing. So I took what I would argue is the wrong approach. And I wanted to convince people, that they were right, I was wrong, that they were wrong and I was right about different topics. And I suppose we all learn through trial and error too, but ultimately then over time, and as we all get older, we learn these lessons. I found that, as Peter and as Sarah Kate were saying, that, people, they have all sorts of struggles, and it's through knowing that you care about them that you really care. And it's not just to prove a point, and to get them to say, oh yes, I suppose the resurrection did happen. That you care about everything that they're going through, their family struggles. So many people are coming from families that might, have all sorts of problems with, the parents' relationship, for instance, amongst other things. That no matter what it is, that we're here with them through all the mess of it, and that we'll be willing to spend 5-6 hours. And so ultimately in my own parish, it's just through spending long periods in conversation and listening to people. Through the youth group that I've set up, quite often it was the case that, the people who joined it, it was just simply for me having a conversation with them after Mass, pouncing on them perhaps, or at other occasions. And I suppose, the retreats that Peter organizes, for instance, are fantastic opportunities. But outside of those things, people spend so much time, whether it's, working down at the local super value or whatever it might be. Well, do we go and seek them out there in their workplace too? Do we top up our mobile phones online, or do we make the extra effort to go down to the shop and do it just to interact with that one person, even if it's only for a minute? Are we really willing to make sacrifices and inconvenience ourselves for their sake?
Yeah, no, that's great. And maybe I'll just go back to Father Vincent here for a moment, Mark, because he's just touched on what seems to be coming across there, Father Vincent, from all the speakers is, it's amazing to see, ourselves as priests, you can have a certain amount of influence, but it can only go so far. And here you see the church, when the laity are so passionate and involved, reaching places and people that we could never reach, and all organs of the church really working together. And I suppose for yourself, seeing that you've been ordained a priest a number of years now, how have you found that? What seems to be coming across is this: what's most important is that personal contact, which is so core to evangelization, not about just proclaiming the truths of the faith, which is so important. It has to be there, but it has to be accompanied by this sense of you really you really care about this person in front of you. They're not just an object for you in that sense. And I suppose as a diocesan priest, you spend so much time, I'm sure, with people in their houses and so forth and visiting. And how's that experience been for you?
I mean, I think Mark hit the nail on the head there when he talked about, it's not like convincing them of the truth of the resurrection, because that can turn into I did it, I'm great kind of thing. And I don't know, it could have been Aquinas or one of them talking about love being the soul of all the other virtues, or the one that breathes life into everything else. And Mark just hit the nail on the head with that there. And you talk about connection in the question, and I think the two-way connection is crucial, because it is just going to be me trying to prove myself and having a successful ministry, and then I'm a great priest, unless my connection with the Lord is solid, and that He can work through me, and that He continues to humble me in the best possible way. And then, as all the lads have borne witness to there, and I think, going from Peter and this emphasis on adoration and emphasis on being alive with the Lord, and then you have Sarah and Mark, and all talking about the person connection and walking with people, and just fantastic stuff to see. But once, and I think Mike Schmidt mentioned it as well about, what do you have to give them if you're not praying, you don't have anything, you're not bringing anything with you. And the other thing I took from Father Mike is something like 6 or 7% are active in the church, and if we could only bump that up to 8%, and Sarah mentioned it there, she said about multiplication, and you get one person, and they maybe bring somebody else, like Andrew brought Simon Peter, and then somebody else was brought along, and that's the original way it was done. And I mean, it's just fantastic to see that life, and Peter as well. Like it's good news, and it's inspiring stuff that the young church is alive, and it's small. It's always small beginnings. Like I have a prayer group now with maybe 5 or 6 people who are dedicated, and we're just finding our feet. And but it's like that. There's an excitement about it. There's a sense of connection with the Lord, and the opening up of a whole new vista of life. The mystery of life. It's not so mechanical and humdrum as the secular world. There's that sense of something amazing bursting out from every corner, fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Father Vincent. I suppose at this stage now we've heard from all our panelists too. I think we'll take some questions thank you very much for sending them in from home, just so that you can feel engaged with what we're doing here, because ultimately, most of the people will be speaking from personal experience here within their families and their own experiences of evangelization. Maybe, so I have Mark here in front of me, so maybe you can start us off with answering this, Mark. Someone says that, how do you start evangelizing a person cynical about the church due to the scandals and the many difficult things that we've been through in the last number of decades?
Absolutely. That's a really, really pertinent question. I was actually in a lecture at one stage during college where it was around consumer behavior, and the particular question was around moral credibility of organizations. Needless to say, the church's moral credibility on all issues, regardless of what the topic is, has been severely jeopardized by that particular history. So I think showing ourselves as morally credible individuals, whether it's in issues of ecology, whether it's in issues of other areas of social justice, do we actually do the corporal works of mercy and the spiritual works of mercy? Do we really care about people ultimately? Does that come through our lives and through the people that we choose to associate with? I think it's through our own moral credibility and introducing people to others then ultimately like us, who can bear witness to that slowly but surely people will change. But ultimately it's the case of putting boots on the ground and getting into the trenches there.
Great stuff, Mark. Maybe Peter, if we could get Peter up on the screen, a question to ask Peter, because also I know that Peter, you used to do workshops for the U2000 retreat. I attended some of them myself, and what I want to bring in here just quickly before we go to another question is the role of technology. I remember you gave a workshop on, I suppose, also the positive nature of it, but the difficulties in evangelization with regards to young people because of the sheer intensity and overwhelming power of technology upon them, how you develop a prayer life when you're so engaged virtually all the time. Maybe if you can just maybe talk a little bit about the workshops that you give on that and your main message.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real pleasure to work with young people. People who work with young people, when they are young, it gives them energy, and when they're older, it gives them hope. And there's something very, very beautiful about that. I think Father Vinny and Mark and Sarah Kate have really encapsulated this beautifully in the sense that you act out of a desire to care for the other person's well-being. And there is nothing, it's one thing to care for someone's well-being on a physical level, but whenever you want them to have the happiness that you have, and you know that you got this happiness through your encounter with Jesus, it's a lot like your friend who's in love. And they're constantly putting something on Facebook, and they're constantly putting it out there that met this wonderful person, and this person's great. And when you encounter Jesus, you have this desire that other people will share in that love, that other people will share in that goodness. You just know that this is going to make their lives better. And technology is one way that we can do that. A few people have touched on it and said it's difficult to sort of say, I am a Catholic in Ireland today. And I would say that is correct. But I also think that we are called to be brave and to be courageous and to stand in our identity and say, there's a few turning points in your life. And I think one of those turning points is the day that you acknowledge Jesus in a Facebook post, or you acknowledge Jesus on an Instagram post, because on that day you have just openly admitted to all of your virtual friends who you are, who your identity in Christ is. And as well as that, you've said, I am confident in my identity in Christ to share it with you. And the reason I share it with you is not I'm great, look at me, I'm so much better. It's actually that I genuinely feel happier and better having encountered my faith. And I want you to experience this too. If you come and see what I've seen, your life will be happier. So it's an act of love. In that regard, social media is really, really important. It's not so important as to detract from your prayer time. It's not so important as to detract from your personal relationship with Jesus. But it's a great, big, wonderful, wide net that we can fish with. And when we throw out the net, you're going to catch all these people, and you can catch their curiosity. And then you just do what St. Andrew did. You introduce them to who you've met. And as Sarah touched on it wonderfully, you're no one's saviour. We have a saviour in Jesus, but you do have a role to introduce them to him. And social media now is an incredible opportunity to do that. So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, you know what, I haven't taken that life milestone, I haven't put a Jesus post on my social media, I would encourage that person to do it in the way that you would have received well. So if you saw it on somebody else's post, do it in that way that you would have thought, oh, actually, what's all that about? I'll Google that later. And you'll never, ever, ever look back. I remember the first time I did it, I was proper nervous, but I'm old enough to remember Nokia 3310s. If you guys remember Nokia 3310s.
Probably myself and Vincent, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember my first step was when I put the words God bless on the end of a text message, and I spent 10 minutes worrying about, this friend is going to think I've lost it. But I'll never forget that, because you know what, it was the first day, it was the first step of the rest of your life in some regards, because you have to be a confident and bold young Catholic.
Yeah, I suppose it's just the message we need to hear today, being leading into the Feast of Pentecost, tomorrow, that we need the gifts of the Spirit, and we especially, you could say today in the Church in Ireland, the gift of courage.
Yes.
that courage just to stand up for your faith and be convicted of it, and as you said, that was a moment of courage for you, even just something what seems quite small on social media, but has huge impact personally on yourself, and I'm sure it was a great witness. So thanks very much, Peter. Sarah, I just want to move on to you, and just a question to Sarah, which is from a mother at home, and we can all kind of sympathize with this. What words of encouragement, it says this mother, can I give to my daughter who is expecting her second baby, but has given up going to Mass and says she has her own way of praying? So I suppose a mother who's trying to find a way of bringing her daughter back to the church.
I guess that's that's a difficult thing for that mother, and I sympathise with her. I have family members too that don't practice, but say they practice, and you're like, no, you're not practicing, because that's not how you practice. So I totally empathise with that woman. But I guess what I'd say is just like keep hint dropping, keep, you know, I don't know, popping the rosary beads like in her car, and you know, sending her a little quote. There's lots of like platforms on Instagram at the moment. If the mother has Instagram or Facebook or online, there's Youth 2000 Ireland, Ignite Ireland, all these beautiful profiles that on the daily post really encouraging kind of relatable quotes that, and I even sometimes screenshot them and send them on to friends who I think they might apply to, and then that friend will reply and be like, you know, that really touched me today, I needed to hear that, so thank you. It's just all about the intentionality and just loving her for who she is. She is a daughter of God. She's your daughter, and I know you want the faith for her and your grandchild, and just keep praying for her, and not to force is never going to work, but I see and know your desire to want it for her because you know it yourself, and that's always the tricky thing, is like communicating the joy that comes with our faith, but you have to show that joy too. You can't feel like don't fall into the victim culture, the victim trap, I would recommend, and just show that by like your faith and your constant kind of your daily sacrifices, it's all rooted in the Lord and in your faith, and that hopefully then someday that she can realize that that's what mom did and that's what I want to now do for my child. But I have been in similar situations but it's just a matter of keep tapping away. I feel, don't give up, and I guess I don't know. It's a tough one though.
It is a tough question. Yeah, it is a tough question, and that's why I put it to you. I knew you could handle it. You know.
I don't know.
So no, I suppose from myself, like you touched on it there, it's important to say the importance of prayer as well. It has to be prayer in action. You have to witness. But like from my own experience, those who know my own story, it was my sister prayed for me every day for 13 years that I would come back to the faith, because I'd lost my way in many ways, you know. And it took 13 years, but God answered those prayers, and I'm absolutely certain that it was her prayers that brought me back to the faith. And so just to encourage that mother at home who sent in that question, that ultimately it starts with prayer, that you bring your daughter to the Lord each day in prayer, and then those little moments that you have during the day are with her, just to be the best witness that you could be to your faith, I suppose, and obviously everything that Sarah said there. So thanks very much, Sarah. I'm just going to turn to Father Vincent here for a moment, if you don't mind. We have a question from someone on the Rosary. So as you know, Dominicans are very devoted to the Rosary, so maybe we can talk this one through.
Sure.
So someone asks, have you any tips on how to concentrate during prayer, especially the Rosary, and what does it mean to pray from the heart? So a lot of people, as a priest, you get this a lot of times, people struggling to concentrate during prayer and the distractions of the mind and so forth, and any advice you might have for them there.
Oh God, I mean, I struggle with my prayer at times, and the concentration element and distractions, and the mind is so complex, and things that just pop into your mind. I mean, this morning I was praying in my office, and halfway through one of the Psalms I kind of realised, I'm starting to think, have I my alb left out for the trip to Cork, or what am I going to say? And then you realise and you're back into it. And some of the saints, I'm not sure, it could have been Therese or Teresa or Mother Teresa, one of the said, the distractions are wonderful opportunities for conversion, because you're literally turning your mind back to God. Each time you figure out I'm distracted, that's a chance to repent, to convert, to turn your mind back to the Lord, and to see it that way. Because I don't know, unless you're like some kind of Zen master or something, your mind is going to move, and there's going to be distractions, and that's going to happen no matter who you are. But I certainly think, if you're coming to your prayer space from something frenetic and you've been on the internet or playing computer or that, your mind is going to be churned up, and you're not going to be in that space. Or if you're doing it in the wrong area and there's lots of distractions, so like the place where you pray, your own prayer space at home, if it's your bedroom and you just have a little corner that focuses your mind on the Lord, you might have a Bible there, candle, statue of Our Lady. I mean, that's one of the things. And I suppose you've three levels of prayer that we talk about, like the vocal prayers. So you're saying the Hail Marys, Then you've the meditation, where your mind is wrestling, and that's like climbing a mountain. Like bit by bit you make progress and you grow in your understanding, and eventually you're in a real dialogue with the Lord and you know him well, but that doesn't happen straight away. And the third part then is the contemplation. And in a sense, I think the contemplation is when he seizes you through his beauty and truth and goodness. And you just kind of sit there with the Lord in a peace that the world cannot give. But I've heard, and there's a great prayer master, David Tarkington, he's wrote books, and he talked about his mother praying the Rosary and the different eras of her life and the good and the bad and the real difficult things she went through. And there was times all she could do was say the Hail Mary. Yeah. And all she could do on the beads was actually say, Hail Mary, Hail Mary. She had some traumatic incident, and that was all she could do, hold the beads and say Hail Mary. And he said that was a beautiful, pure prayer. So, I mean, it really depends on the situation. And
That's great, Father Vincent. Thanks very much. So we've only a few minutes left, so maybe we go back to the panelists just for a last little round-up question. Maybe Peter, if we can start with you and get an answer from the three of you. I suppose looking to the future, just quickly as best you can sum these things up. But what do we need to do? What do we need to do? I know it's a big question, but looking into the future now, we're already doing a lot, and yourselves, of course. What do you see as the things that we need to start implementing or focusing our evangelization efforts on going forward?
That is just a wonderful question, because it's a question that everybody has the correct answer to. I think when you say we, I hear that as an individual Catholic man, child of God, and I ask, what do I need to do and what does everyone like me need to do? And I think the answer is we need to do. We need to move. We have a restlessness inside us because our hearts are restless until we know Jesus, until we have that personal relationship. So I think we need to move. And what that means is, if we're going to pray, pray. If we're going to start up a prayer group, start up a prayer group. If you're going to post something on social media, post something on social media. I remember watching, I would have been very into sport at one time and into sort of fitness and things like that. And I remember reading somewhere in a book that your bodies are made to move. I think our bodies, our minds and our souls are made to move. We have to exercise our body, our mind and our soul. So I would say to anyone listening to this, if you have an inkling or a restlessness to pick up those rosary beads, do it. If it's to open scripture, do it. If it's to join a Bible study, do it. Move. And then look back and evaluate. Let's not evaluate before we move.
Great, Peter. Thank you very much. Sarah, what about yourself? Just quickly, we've 1 or 2 minutes left. How do you see the future? Obviously being involved with young people. And
the future is so bright. I was so privileged to be involved in a conference with university students in January that was also called Ignite 2020. So
you stole our title.
Cool name this year. You didn't copy us, don't know. I'm joking. But it was an amazing conference where we just saw 120 students, college students specifically, come together for a 3-day retreat. And what was so beautiful was just the community, the fellowship, the faith. These things are there are assets for going forward, staying faithful, not giving into the temptation to conform to the easier option, and just staying connected and in touch with other faithful people. And because you can't do this alone, and the Lord has given us each other for that reason. We were not made to be alone. So by staying faithful, by praying, and just not losing hope. There's the amount of times in church history where it looked like, that's it, church is dead, it's a goner, and it always resurrected itself and came back with a new burst of life. That's going to happen again, and thank God we're the people alive now to actually help in that kind of igniting, so to say. So that's what I think we should do.
Thanks very much, Sarah. God bless you. Thank you. Mark, we give the last word to yourself.
Yeah, I would just echo the really positive note there that Sarah ended on. And I think the time that we are living in at the moment, everyone's rushing down to the garden centre to do their own gardening. Well, let's create a new Eden in our own parish grounds. I think the church should be a beautiful building, a beautiful place a place that people want to be, make it attractive. So if what we have, our artwork, if our grounds and our landscaping, if our parish centres, if they're cold and they're uninviting, in their architecture, in their design, in whatever it might be, then we're not really going to be able to share the gospel as effectively as we can be. So for a lot of people, it's simple, practical things. So, hey, look, if the grass is overgrown and the flowers are all dead outside your church, well, go replant new ones. Do whatever it can, little bit by bit, to make this place a beautiful place that people will want to be.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Mark. And listen, we could have a whole hour's discussion on like evangelization through beauty. Young people want to, when they come into a church, they want to be transported from the world to something that takes them beyond to God, obviously, and liturgy and beauty so important for that. So thanks very much for making that kind of that point. In fact, so I just, before we sign out, I'll just say, any concluding thoughts there, Father Vincent, on everything we've listened to and how we go forward, you think?
Yeah, so just one little observation, I think. I mean, if we really need to figure out who's responsible for the formation of these three young people who are so theologically in tuned and on fire with their faith, and if it's your parents or if it's your teachers or whatever was done there, to have three people who can step out and take in, stand in this conference and witness to the Lord and the joy of the faith and the desire to share it. And it's like Peter said, like he's excited about what the church is going to be. And when I see this caliber of witness, it's clear that the Spirit of God is moving our young people, and we just need to make it bigger than 7%, and hopefully, like the institutional church will get behind it. Sure. And support these things and draw people deeper into the faith. Like my last thought, maybe one of Bishop Barron's things, because I see with the lads, they have it so deeply. Bishop Barron says, don't water it down. Don't make it like as Father Mike said, a pizza party. Sure. Where Jesus isn't mentioned. And that's what we're trying to do in our parish at the moment, bit by bit, try to actually go deep. So
great. Well, listen, just to thank those at home for sending in your questions, and to thank the panelists, obviously, as well, and to thank yourself, Father Vincent, for coming up. So I think now we're going to have a short video, and the next section will be on evangelization and the family. So thank you all for listening.